This video is sponsored by us. We now offer a complete line of arcade parts in the Geek Pub store. Shop the store at thegeekpub.com. So you guys might not be aware, but the average YouTube video, at least for content creators that build stuff, for every minute of YouTube video that you see online, there's an hour or two of behind-the-scenes work that has to happen to make that minute a reality. And it's inevitable that when we're building projects that things go wrong, that parts are delayed, or we just run out of time. And so because of that, sometimes we release videos before we're really 100% satisfied with them. And that's what I did with the Cocktail Table Arcade. I had been working on it for about 3 weeks, which is a week longer than I actually had planned. And the Cocktail Table Arcade is fine. It's wonderful. But there's a few improvements that I think we can make. And quite honestly, there's just some things I didn't finish, like labeling the buttons on the control panel. So in this video, we're just going to clean things up a little bit and make it a little bit better. Let's get started. So the first thing I did was remove the clips that hold the glass in place. I wanted to get the glass out of the way so that it didn't get scratched or broken. Then I removed the 4 screws holding the tabletop on the cabinet. Some of the people in the comments complained that this should have been glued permanently. Having the top removable allows for much easier maintenance and repairs in the future. There are 2 things I want to change about the top of the Cocktail Table Arcade. So the first one is, and many of the astute of you noticed this in the video, that I did not sand the inside of the MDF where the monitor sits. And I built the whole freaking arcade before I realized that. I was already filming the final scenes and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to sand the inside of that. Maybe nobody will notice. I knew you guys would notice. So there's that. But then after playing the arcade for a while, one thing occurred to me is I really want to get the screen closer to the glass. Now, what you could do is you could simply cut out the hole all the way and let the monitor itself butt up against the glass. But the problem with that is this monitor was taken out of it had a bezel around it, and so there's a big ugly metal and plastic bezel that would show through the glass if we did that. So I need some of the MDF to cover it, or I would have to come up with some kind of like 3D printed rectangle or something to put around it. So what I think I can do that will work even better is if I just lower the countersink. Basically it's nothing more than a rabbit behind the scenes that the monitor sits down into. I think what I'll do is I'll lower that rabbit by about half of this distance, and then I'll make a second rabbit for the monitor to sit down into. You'll see as we get there. I removed the 4 screws holding the monitor and then set the monitor aside for safekeeping. I took the tabletop over to the router table and adjusted the rabbiting bit to the proper height. I wanted to leave about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters of material. The rabbiting bit has a bearing on the top that can be changed out to different sizes. This controls the depth of the cut, and I generally run it at the slowest setting when cutting MDF. You can see this moves the monitor much closer to the glass. Now we need to make another ledge that the monitor can mount to. This means making a second pass on the router with the bit lowered to the exact depth of the monitor. You can see the bearing is now riding on the previous cut we made. And there you have it, a lip to hide the monitor bezel and another ledge for the monitor to mount to. I used a sanding sponge to quickly sand down the lip so that it would look nice this time. I then quickly shot the sanded areas with a fresh coat of paint. Being flat paint, it should blend with the old paint without needing to reshoot the entire top. And there's the finished product. Not too bad. So I flipped it over, put the monitor back into place, and then screwed it back down. Oh man, that looks so much better. Let's compare before and after so you can really see the difference. So the next thing I want to do is focus on labeling these buttons. And normally what I would do with these buttons is I have a robotic vinyl cutter, and I would make some neat little designs in the vinyl cutter software, print them out, and then you can peel them off and stick them on. And that looks really, really fantastic. And you can do all kinds of different colors because you get the vinyl in any color you want. So somebody in the comments made a very interesting comment. They said, not everybody has a vinyl cutter or can afford one, but lots of people have a label maker. And so I'm like, that's a really neat idea, because you can plug this into your PC and you can make all kinds of cool graphics, letters, numbers, anything you want, and then print it out on, the clear, black and clear tape. And so let's try it. So I plugged my label maker into my PC and dropped some images I whipped up in Photoshop onto the P-Touch editor. Brother has a built-in profit enhancer where they waste about an inch of tape between every print. Buy a different brand. Anyway, the printed out labels look amazing. To remove the caps from the buttons, there's a little tab on both sides. Just press them in with a screwdriver and the tops pop right off. It's this little white insert that we stick our labels onto. Since the sticker is square and the button is rounded, I just applied it as is and then used a hobby knife to quickly trim it down to size. And after putting the cap back on, I have to say, that looks much better than I expected. So I put the cap back in the button, plugged it into power, and turned the lights off. Again, I'm impressed. More light shows through the graphics than with the vinyl, but this is certainly acceptable. Here's a select button I also made. So I got busy unscrewing and removing all of the buttons from the control panel. I popped out each button cap and then set them aside. After Brother wasted some more tape, I made a long string of different button labels. Then one by one, I put them on the buttons. Again, not as good as the vinyl I've used before, but this is now my second favorite way to make button labels. So a little boneheaded mistake that I made in the first build was that I forgot to drill the speaker holes until I was almost completely finished with the arcade. So I went back and I drilled the holes, and it was already painted at that point. And so now when you look at the holes, you see the wood. Many of you pointed this out in the video. I probably should, in the comments that is, I probably should have mentioned this as part of the build process. But for whatever reason I didn't, and so we're going to fix that. I'm just going to hit it a little bit with a sanding sponge. I'm going to tape it off, and we're going to just reshoot that spot. I like to use a sanding sponge for stuff like this because it's flexible and it adds a small chamfer in the holes if you press hard enough. Now, not everyone likes rattle can paint, and there are definitely some cons. But one of the pros is that it's super easy to repair or make changes later. It's a significant effort to get a paint gun all set up for such a small redo, and then spend 20 minutes cleaning it up after 2 minutes of use. Another quick little fix I did was to add a knob to open the back door. With everything completed, I went to work putting the cocktail table arcade back together. Before putting the top back on, I turned the arcade on and tested the lights and joysticks. Looks fantastic. So I put the top and the glass back on. No more wood showing through the holes. Nice labeled buttons. And best of all, the monitor looks amazing being so close to the glass. Okay, so I'm actually super impressed with how these labels turned out. I did not think going into this that the labels were going to look that good. I really did not. So thanks to Justin M for making that comment and suggestion. It was really a good one. It's not as good as the vinyl cut labels, but man, it's a really close second. So thanks for that. I'm also really happy now with the way that the monitor sits. It's so much closer to the glass, and it just feels so much better. And so that's a good update. And then there's one thing I really wanted to address in this video, and I'll just address it here at the end. And I must have got like 20 or 30 comments on the original Cocktail Table Arcade video where people said, cocktail tables are a waste of time because the second player has to play upside down. Who wants to do that? I am surprised how many people believe that that's true, but it's not. So cocktail tables, if you have the right games, like Pac-Man for example, if you have the cocktail table mode set, then between players it actually spins the entire screen the other direction for player 2 to play. And other games, like for example Space Duel, both players can play at the exact same time. The game was actually designed for cocktail tables. And so absolutely not, that's a myth. I don't know where that came from. 2-player on a cocktail is what it's made for. See you in the next video.